My husband died on a Tuesday morning. After 30 years together, you get used to someone's presence, even when it's unpleasant most of the time. He wasn't kind. He wasn't easy to live with. But his absence didn't bring relief. It brought a silence I wasn't prepared for. Right after my husband's death, my memories blurred. I don't remember making any funeral arrangements. Papers appeared in front of me to sign. Everything simply appeared in front of me, even the glass of water. It was already there before my throat even felt dry. What unsettled me wasn't the kindness. It was how little I had to ask for anything. By the afternoon, my children started talking about the house. They said I wouldn't be able to afford it on my own. They said it was too big for one person. They said it made sense for me to move in with one of them, at least for a while. The decision had already been made for me, and I would be moving in the very next day. They didn't ask me what I wanted. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing the sweater I had slept in, listening to them discuss my life like it was a problem they needed to solve quickly. That was when I asked for a week. Just one. I told them I had lived in that house for more than 30 years. I told them I needed time to go through things, to say goodbye properly, to leave without feeling like I was abandoning something unfinished. They didn't like that answer, but none of them met my eyes when I said it. My oldest son checked his watch. My daughter sighed. My youngest didn't look at me at all. Then, eventually, they agreed. 1 week. They said they would come back the following Tuesday to help me pack whatever was left. That first night alone was terrible. I felt lonely and barely slept. I slept in short stretches. Each time I woke up, my heart racing, I carried the image of a small, dark room from my dreams, along with the feeling that I'd forgotten something important. The next morning, I started packing. I began with the things I meant to get rid of: old shoes, outdated utensils. I knew there was more in the basement, but I told myself it could wait. It was cramped and poorly lit, and I didn't feel like dealing with it yet. I avoided the photographs until late in the afternoon. They lined the shelves in the living room and the hallway walls. 30 years of carefully chosen moments. Smiles, vacations, birthdays. Proof that we had lived a normal life. I picked up our wedding photo. It sat in the same silver frame it had always been in. I knew every scratch on the glass, every darkened corner of the metal. I had dusted it hundreds of times. As I lifted the frame, my hands were shaking, and I didn't know why. Something slipped out from behind the photo and fluttered to the floor. A small, folded piece of paper. I stared at it before picking it up. My first thought was that one of the children must have hidden it there years ago. Some forgotten joke. I unfolded it carefully. It said, "If you find this, don't ask him." The handwriting made my chest tighten. I had written it. I recognized the way the letters leaned slightly to the right, the uneven spacing, the pressure of the pen where my hand must have shaken. But I couldn't remember when I had written it, or why. I laughed softly because it made no sense. On the third day, while packing up, I found a key. It was hidden inside a box, tucked away with a pair of winter boots we rarely used, shoved deep inside one of my husband's shoes. I had never seen the key before. Even so, I tried it on every door in the house. It didn't work on any of them. That's when something felt off. My hand rested on the back door without me realizing why. I checked the lock, then checked it again. So I remembered something. One that made me uncomfortable. It had been years ago, late at night. I had woken up and noticed the back door was unlocked. He told me he must have forgotten. He smiled when he said it. I believed him. But standing there now, a chill ran through me. That afternoon, While sorting through old paperwork, I found a newspaper clipping folded inside a folder I had kept with my own things. The article was old, years old. It was about the disappearance of a woman. She had last been seen walking near the edge of our neighborhood. At the time, the police had spoken to several neighbors, including my husband. I remembered going with him when they asked questions. He told them he hadn't seen anything, that he'd been home, reading, with me. I confirmed it. But standing there now, the memory shifted. That night, he had come home later than usual. He'd washed his hands twice before sitting down. He'd asked me, casually, if anyone had stopped by while he was gone. I remembered answering no. And I remembered the look on his face when I said it. Relief. I knew something was wrong. Even when the police asked questions later, I told them nothing. I had already learned which questions not to answer. That evening, my daughter called. She asked if I was making progress, if I was eating, if I was sleeping. When I mentioned the article, there was a pause on the line. "You don't need to go through everything," she said gently. "Some things don't need to be remembered." On Sunday, my sons came by without warning. I showed them what I had found. I led them down to the basement, past the shelves and the concrete walls, to the section I had avoided for years. I moved the false wall aside, revealing the narrow door behind it. Then I reached into my pocket, took out the key, and unlocked it. They froze when the door opened. The room was small, windowless, wrong in a way that didn't need explanation. My daughter broke down almost immediately. She cried the way someone does when a thought they've carried for years is finally confirmed. My sons didn't cry. They just stood there, staring, their faces tight with something heavier than shock. They told me they had always felt something was wrong. We all had. But none of them had ever confronted their father. Fear had kept them quiet, just as it had kept me quiet. The room didn't tell us anything new. It only confirmed what we already knew, and had spent years refusing to say out loud. The police sealed the house for investigation. Now they had a direction, an idea of what might have happened to the missing woman, and maybe to others. I left before the police finished, before the press arrived, before the house became a story. We're far from there now, far from the place I once called home. But it was never a home. It was a prison. For me, and for other women. I keep thinking about the courage I never had, about the questions I didn't ask, the things I chose not to see. Maybe if I had spoken sooner, someone would still be alive, maybe more than one. That thought stays with me. There's a passage in the Bible that says, knowing what is right and choosing not to act carries its own guilt. I understand that now. The silence I lived with for years wasn't harmless. It was a choice. And it's one I'll carry for the rest of my life. The first time I noticed the extra hours on my timesheet, I thought it was just a system error. The payment was higher than it should have been. I always check my overtime, and there were 3 extra hours I hadn't worked. I meant to talk to HR the next day, but I forgot. It didn't feel like a big deal at the time, so I let it go. I shouldn't have. At the time, I was working as a night guard at an automated warehouse on the edge of the city. The place handled packaged freight, nothing special, and most of the operation ran without people. Robots moved pallets. Conveyor belts followed strict schedules. My job was simple: monitor alerts, walk the floor once an hour, and step in if something went wrong. That's why the extra hours didn't make sense, and it happened again after that, spaced out over time. Every few months, the extra hours would show up. I'd notice them, tell myself I'd talk to HR, and then forget. Until it happened again and again. Months later, my supervisor pulled me aside. He told me there had been an incident 2 nights earlier. A routing error on one of the automated lines. A pallet had been sent to the wrong loading bay. It caused a delay, nothing serious, but the system flagged it. And it's signed off under your ID, he said. I remember saying, that's impossible, almost automatically. He turned the screen toward me. There it was, my electronic signature, time-stamped. So I told him I hadn't been there, that I was off that night. He nodded slowly, like he was listening, but not fully convinced. I told him payroll had added hours I hadn't worked, and that it must have been wrong. He didn't argue. He just told me to be more careful next time and left. So I went straight to HR to report the extra hours. Halfway there, one of the logistics guys passed by, someone I'd seen around a few times before. He nodded, then hesitated. Didn't expect to see you again, he said. I asked what he meant. He shrugged. I thought you'd already been here earlier. That made my stomach tighten. I asked him to explain. He said he'd seen someone inside when he came through that afternoon. Same build as me, same height, but wearing a dark hoodie instead of my usual jacket. I laughed it off. I don't own a dark hoodie. But after he walked away, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I couldn't focus. Every alert made me jump. Every sound felt closer than it should have been. I kept thinking about my badge, hanging from my belt, swinging slightly as I walked. The same badge that controlled doors, logged hours, signed off on errors. At around 2 a.m., I called the IT support line and asked if they could pull access logs. I told them there might be a duplication error with my credentials. The guy on the phone hesitated, then said he could take a look. 10 minutes later, he called back. There are multiple scans under your ID on your off days, he said. Different access points, same badge. I asked him if it could be spoofed. He paused, then said, not easily. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a glitch. The next day, I asked to review the security footage. At first, they pushed back. Policy, privacy, usual excuses. But after I insisted, and after another discrepancy popped up, this time involving missing inventory, they agreed. A woman from internal operations sat with me in the monitoring room. She seemed uncomfortable, not suspicious, just careful. We skipped through footage from one of the nights I was supposedly working, and there I was, or someone who looked close enough. Same height, same build, same posture. Wearing a cap low over his face and a dark hoodie zipped all the way up, using my badge, walking like he knew exactly where he was going. I felt sick. 2 days later, the police showed up at the warehouse. This time, it wasn't just an error. A shipment had gone missing. High-value electronics, and every system trail led back to one person. Me. The problem was, I didn't have an alibi. I lived alone. No cameras in my apartment building. No one who could confirm I was home. From their perspective, it was simple. I had access. I had credentials. And now there was stolen cargo. They were polite, calm, but firm. When they asked why I hadn't reported the extra hours earlier, I didn't have a good answer. Because of that, the warehouse suspended me pending investigation. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the wall, when my phone rang. It was the woman from internal operations, the one who'd helped me with the footage. She told me she'd found something. We met later that evening. She showed me another clip. Different angle, different night. This time, the man using my badge made a mistake. He looked up, just long enough for the camera to catch part of his face. She froze the frame. I didn't recognize him at first. Then she pulled up an old employee photo, former warehouse tech. Fired months earlier. Access revoked, at least officially. Same build, same height, same route familiarity. He'd cloned my badge. The police arrested him a few weeks later. Turns out he'd been stealing small shipments for weeks, testing the system, using other people's credentials to avoid detection. I just happened to be the one whose access pattern fit best. When it was over, the charges against me were dropped. Just like that. No apology, no compensation, just a quiet email saying I was cleared. I didn't go back to that job. I found something else. Day work, lower pay, fewer risks. But I still think about how close it came. If he hadn't slipped up, if that camera angle hadn't existed, if the internal ops woman hadn't decided to keep digging, I would have gone to jail for something I didn't do. And the worst part, if I'd been honest from the very beginning, if I'd reported the extra hours the moment I saw them, there would have been a trail. Proof that someone else had been using my badge for a long time. Instead, I ignored it. Because it was easier. And I almost paid for that mistake with my freedom. My name is Caleb, and this happened a few years ago. I'd picked up a temporary job on a remote pig farm in the middle of nowhere. The ad was vague: basic maintenance, animal care, decent pay, room included. I didn't care. I needed the money. The farm belonged to an older man named Howard Mills. He didn't say much when I arrived, just shook my hand, gave me a quick tour, and introduced me to the other workers. There were about 15 men working there, but I only really got close to 2 of them. Ryan, quiet, kept to himself, and Mark, older, rough-looking, but friendly enough. Howard showed me to the room I'd be staying in. It was small. Bed, dresser, single window, and an old wooden door. That's when I noticed it. The door had a lock on the outside. I paused, staring at it longer than I probably should have. Howard noticed. "Old house," he said flatly. "Some things are backwards." I didn't argue. Old farms had quirks. I told myself that was all it was. A few nights later, I stayed out late checking on the pigs. One of them had been sick, and I didn't like leaving things half done. By the time I headed back to the house, it was well past midnight. As I crossed the yard, I noticed a shadow near the side of the house. Something about it made me slow down. I followed the path it took, slow and careful. I watched it move toward the back wall, a solid stretch of siding with no doors or access points. I expected it to turn. It didn't. The shadow reached the wall and vanished, as if it had passed straight through it. I didn't tell anyone about it. I convinced myself there had to be an explanation, and I left it at that. But I should have. The following night, I woke up to a metallic sound outside the house. Something scraping, slow, careful. I got out of bed and reached for the door. The handle spun freely. No resistance, no click, just dead. I pulled harder. Nothing. That's when panic set in. I yelled, banged on the door, called for help. After what felt like forever, the door finally opened. It was Howard. He looked annoyed more than concerned. "Wind probably caught something," he said. "You all right?" I didn't argue. I just nodded. But when I stepped outside, there was nothing. No loose tools, No signs of anything hitting the house. Something was wrong. The next morning, Ryan didn't show up for work. Howard said he'd left during the night. That didn't make sense. Ryan had told me he was saving money to bring his family out there. He barely drank, never went out. People like that don't just leave without a word. But Mark shrugged it off. People leave here all the time, he said. Usually at night. That sentence stuck with me. A few days later, one of the pigs got worse. I went to the office to grab medication. There was no one around, but I'd been there before and knew exactly where the medication was, so I went looking for it myself. While searching, I noticed a drawer slightly open. Inside were photographs. I pulled one out. It was Ryan. He was lying on a metal table, shirt off, wires attached to his chest and arms. His eyes were closed. The date on the back was yesterday. But Ryan had left days ago. My stomach dropped. I heard a sound behind me and shoved the photo back where I found it, grabbed the medicine, and left as fast as I could without running. That night, it was hot. Unbearably hot. I tried to leave the room. Locked again. This time I didn't yell. I went to the window. From the corner of my eye, I saw figures in the distance, moving slowly, carrying something heavy toward the barn. I stayed silent. The next morning, Mark was gone. Howard said the same thing. He left. Later, another worker mentioned something casually over lunch. Funny how everyone leaves at night, huh? That evening, Howard's wife, Elaine, came to my room. She smiled too much, held a small bowl. "I made pudding," she said. "Thought you might like some." I thanked her and waited until she left. I don't like sweets. I dumped it in the toilet. That night, I woke up to voices. Howard and Elaine were standing in my room. Howard was furious. "Where's the pudding?" Elaine said I ate it. Howard grabbed me. I fought back, hard. I don't remember everything clearly, just pain, shouting, crashing furniture. At some point, I got free and ran. As I passed through the house, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Every bedroom door had an external lock, every single one. I ran until my legs gave out, found help, called the police. When they arrived at the farm, it was empty. No Howard, no Elaine, no one. The house looked normal at first, too normal. Beds made, kitchen clean, no signs of a struggle. But behind the barn, they found something buried beneath a concrete slab. A bunker. Inside were metal tables, monitoring equipment, restraints bolted into the floor, and bodies, some old, some recent. Most of the documents had been burned, but not all of them. The police found fragments, logs, timestamps, handwritten notes. Enough to piece part of it together. The men who left hadn't left at all. They had been used. Not killed right away. Observed, logged, tested, heart rate, stress response, sleep cycles, isolation, locked doors. One officer told me they believed Howard had been running some kind of unauthorized behavioral research. Nothing official, nothing registered, just a private operation, hidden on a farm where no one paid attention. What they couldn't explain was how long it had been going on, or how Howard and Elaine managed to disappear without a trace. They never found them. When I lie down at night, my mind always goes back to one thought. If I had eaten the pudding, where would I be now? Ryan didn't have that choice. Mark didn't either. Neither did the others who just left. How many of them suffered, and how many never made it out? Some of the biggest discoveries in human history came at a cost most people prefer not to think about. Medical breakthroughs, early vaccines, treatments that saved millions. And the worst part is knowing how easy it is to hide that kind of thinking. As long as it happens far enough away, behind closed doors, with no one asking questions. I can't help but wonder how many answers humanity is built on, and how many lives were quietly erased to get them. And behind some of them were experiments that never should have happened. People treated as variables, as data points, as disposable. It's the idea that somewhere along the way, someone decided the outcome mattered more than the people.